2026 Danvers Town Budget budget review. And I'll turn things over first to our interim town manager, Rodney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Joining me tonight representing the Select Board is Mike Bean. We'll have a variety of Select Board members joining us throughout the week and then at the Finance Committee warrant review process. I'm going to jump into a brief overview, and then this evening we'll also have library, Danvers Public Schools, as well as land use and community services on the docket for tonight. Just a brief look at where we are in the budget process, slowly moving down those bullets. Tonight we're on Finance Committee budget review. That'll be tonight, Wednesday night, and Thursday night. From there, we'll come back for a Finance Committee warrant review on the 28th and 30th, followed by town meeting on the 19th of May. Historically, we like to show a little bit about the overall value to the taxpayer in Danvers to start these presentations. As you can see, among our list of benchmark communities, we are fourth from the bottom on tax rate. As far as lowest tax rate, the three below us, Salem and Peabody, receive significant state aid, mostly in Chapter 70. And Burlington is much more a robust commercial base than the other communities on the list. So again, in terms of affordability with quality services, we would put Danvers up against any of these communities. In terms of the FY26 budget, our budget pressures this year, many of them will seem familiar because they continue to be items that outpace Proposition 2.5. First, our retirement contribution as part of our evaluation process. We budget to increase 8% every year in order to be fully funded by 2035. We'll talk about that on Wednesday night, but we are still on target to be fully funded by 2035. Also on Wednesday night, we'll talk about, which was really the biggest budget driver and pressure this year, which is the renewal rate on our health insurance. Our renewal rate was at 10.91%. We'll dig in more about it on Wednesday, but again, this is both public and private sectors are seeing the impact of rising insurance costs, and that translated to a $1.45 million increase year over year. Danvers Public Schools came in with 3.8% this year. 5% is their three-year average. That's $1.98 million increase year over year, which they'll talk about this evening. And lastly, Essex Tech, pretty level enrollment. In fact, a slight decrease. Overall, though, it's an over 4% budget increase to the town in terms of the assessment. So if you take a look at all the data points there, those alone, you'll see exceed the new tax revenue available. So between Proposition 2.5 and our projected new growth, we have roughly $3 million. And as you can see by the screen, these alone far exceed $3 million. So in order to balance the budget, we took cuts to various departments as needed. And we also took a look at our local receipts and put us closer to the actual than we probably have ever been, at least in my time here, which we'll talk about in a couple slides as well. Taking a look at our key reserves, FY24 is actual, FY25 is projected other than free cash, and FY26 would be based on, other than free cash, which has been certified, will be based on some warrant article recommendations we'll have coming up later on this month. As in past years, building and maintaining key reserves remains a priority, and this slide gives an overview of what we hope to achieve through FY26. Free cash was strong this year, probably historic at $13.87 million. We will talk a little bit about that in the next slide. The target is 3 to 5% of net general fund revenue. That's the Department of Revenue best practice. That would put us at roughly 5 to 7 million. So you can see we're almost double that, but again, there's a couple caveats to point out in that figure. Debt stabilization, which we historically use to offset and shave the debt peak. We're contemplating a contribution of $5 million as part of the warrant process this year. General stabilization will be recommending $1 million. Right now we have $5 million, a little over $5 million in that account. And then the OPEB trust, again, this is based on projected market results as well as our annual contribution, which increases each year by $50,000. Digging in specifically on free cash, so this is certified annually by the state. As I mentioned, the recommendation is to hit 3 to 5% of operating revenue. And our local policy is to leave 1% of 1% of the operating budget in abeyance after town meeting concludes in May. We use free cash to fund a lot of items. Some of these are, again, one-time purchases, and some of these are annual expenses that could be either put into the operating budget, or some communities bond these. This would be our vehicles, our heavy equipment. We do our building and ground improvements primarily through free cash. We do our paving in addition to Chapter 90 primarily through free cash, as well as the tech warrant. We also use free cash to strengthen and maintain reserves, the ones we talked about on the slide before: general stabilization, debt stabilization, our contribution annually to the OPEB trust, as well as the special education stabilization. The estimate to actual delta continues to shrink over the past couple of years, and we see that now in FY25 and what we project in FY26. So from FY24 to FY26, we're looking at a $4 million increase in the projection. So that's not $4 million in new revenue. That is us projecting closer to the actual, which, as we've mentioned in years past, is a direct drawdown of the following year's free cash. This is needed to maintain services, and we think that we can get there and still hit our revenue estimates. 2 times where these revenues cratered, it's worth pointing out, and one of the reasons why we are hesitant to get too close to the actual, both the Great Recession and the pandemic. The town was able to maintain services and not go into deficit because we had the space to absorb the revenue shortfalls, a lot of building permit shortfalls in the Great Recession, as well as other accounts, and then the pandemic. Obviously, our hotel and motel, meals tax, motor vehicle all went down significantly. So if you look at the actual free cash that was just certified at $13.87 million, 2 what I would call one-time revenues worth pointing out. One is our landfill project, which continues to be a quality project, generated $3.8 million in unanticipated revenue in FY24. So that's $3.8 million right there. And then over $2.5 million above projection for our investment income. Again, investment rates are at a historic rate. They're still high. I think it's roughly 4.5 in our main depository account right now. So again, generating revenue that, historic rates that we haven't seen in some time. So that account brought in $3 million in '24. Just a couple of years before that, it only brought in $196,000. So again, while it's good and it's going to help us balance these budgets, we want to make sure that we maintain a number that we can hit. So working with our investment consultants, we feel comfortable that the number we're going to project in FY26 is reasonable and doesn't put us into a potential structurally unsound budget. So if you back both of those numbers out, you get roughly a little over $7 million, which again would be close to our target of 3 to 5%. Looking at the Select Board goals and objectives, the Select Board had 3 main goals and objectives this year, in addition to their ongoing objectives. The first was maintain current staffing and services and hold fees at current levels while the town transitions to a new town manager. The FY26 budget does adhere to that guideline. It was also to ensure public safety and emergency services have the appropriate funding in place to be fully staffed. Police is adequately funded to hire a full complement of officers in FY26, which we'll talk about on Thursday night, including the addition of 1 new additional officer, the first since 2008. It also includes funding for a staffing study to assess the overall long-term needs of the department, both in staffing and structure. And fire department funding is increased as well. As you may be aware, we had a SAFER grant, which funded 3 grant position firefighters. That grant concluded in February of this year. The FY25 budget took care of that delta for the remainder of this year. And FY26, they fully become absorbed through the tax levy, partially offset by a projected reduction in overtime costs. And lastly, the third goal, provide Danvers Public Schools with the resources to continue making progress in areas such as special education. The town again made that a priority in the FY26 budget to allocate funding, and Superintendent and his team will be talking about that later on today. Some of the highlights, if you will, in terms of expenditures. As we mentioned, schools is at 3.8%. That's down from their 6.4% increase last year, which was driven by a historic investment in SPED, which we'll talk about later. General government, that includes funding to ensure full staffing of public safety and emergency services. You see a 3.83% increase year over year. In terms of debt, related to the great rates, structuring of our new debt and the debt schedule, we have some big pieces of debt falling off. We only have 1 piece of new debt coming on, and that was the acquisition of the development rights at the Rebecca Nurse Homestead for $750,000. The first year of that debt service will hit in FY26. Benefits, as we talked about and we'll talk about on Wednesday, the 10.91% renewal. We have a reduced contingency We really tried to shave that number down as much as we could that we felt comfortable doing. But we're not alone, both in the public and private sector, seeing these renewal rates. Again, just a sneak preview of Wednesday, Maya, our consortium that we purchased through, their range of rates went from 9.9 to 19.9. So our 10.91 was on the lower side, believe it or not. Essex Tech, stable enrollment, a 4.09% increase year over year in terms of the assessment. And then the total expenditures, which also includes capital outlay, which we'll talk about on Thursday, and our unappropriated or cherry sheet charges. The overall budget is increasing 4.24%. In terms of revenue, the town will once again be at its levy limit projected going into the process. We'll see what happens once we get to rate setting in December. But the projection will be a 3.26% increase. That's our full levy capacity, plus an estimated new growth, again, of 600,000, which is a conservative number that we routinely hit. State aid, we are essentially a minimum increase this year. Overall, that translates to a 2.41% increase on our state aid year over year. And then local receipts, where we, as I mentioned, where we try to squeeze out some excess revenue to maintain services. You can see an 11.84%. A couple of the big drivers there. The investment income, as I discussed, is up 700,000 as an estimate over the prior year. We also have a revised pilot agreement with the electric division, which is a little over 400,000. Motor vehicle excise, again, is simply taking us closer to the actual projected number. And then a slight increase in fees as well. And other available funds, $90,000 change. And with that, I'm happy to answer any overview questions. Otherwise, the library would be up first.
Wally? Anything?
Oh, wait.
You'll wait. Ed?
The renewal rate that they come through, how many years is that locked for? Just one?
1 year.
So they can come back. What's the cadence been in the last few years?
So if you remember, a few years ago, we switched from Tufts and went back to Maya, of which we were a founding community. We got a decrease in our rate that year, I believe a 0 after, a 2. It's crept up to, I think it was a 4, a little over 4 last year. So this is more than double in recent years.
What was the rationale?
It's a variety of factors. Rising costs of delivering services was one. Increased utilization coming out of the pandemic was another. Also, the rising prescription drug costs, including some of those.
Right, everybody's on Ozempic now, except for me.
Everyone in town's looking great.
You mentioned in the fire department, Rodney, when was the safer, when were those, the safer grant, when was that initiated?
2022, I believe, would have been the first year.
And at that time, were those head counts that were prior part of the tax levy that we
No, they were
moved to we added?
Yeah, so the way the Safer Grant works, in order to to be funded for those positions, they have to be additional on top of your existing staff.
Okay. And then I think you mentioned we lowered our return assumption this year on the pension side?
Yeah, so on the pension side, we lowered it to 7%,
Okay.
which is still a little bit higher than a lot of our peer communities, but it's still a drop relative. We were at 7.125 was our assumed rate of return, the prior valuation.
And if I remember, we lowered it a couple years ago too, right? From seven, was it from 7.5?
So it was 7.5. I think when I started, I believe it might have been 8, but it was 7.5. Then we went down to 7.125.
Okay.
And now 7 this year. And that's still, even with doing that, we won't exceed 8% year over year, which is, again, still a significant increase, but we won't exceed that, and we'll still be fully funded in 2035.
What's the change in funding need if we alter the goal to be done by 24? Is it 2040 is the deadline? The actual
2040 is the actual PEREC.
I know we don't want to walk it that
Yeah.
close, but I'm just curious, now we're getting to the point where, there's not that many years left, doing it between 2035 and like, the difference between 10 and 15 is meaningful. Do you know how much that would swing things?
I don't know if we've done, I'd have to look at my prior evaluations, see if we did one to see if we projected out to 2040, but generally we just do 2035. Yeah.
Okay, and then, I guess last question, how has the budgeting process been so far? Maybe you or Mike could answer. Was there anything contentious or challenged or discussed in depth at the
Mike said he
select board
loved the
hearings?
budget, is that right, Mike?
I know about it.
No, there was,
Clearing up the
yeah.
rash.
I don't believe there were any contentious items that I'm aware of, but.
So it passed fairly cleanly, without any challenges? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
Almost right now.
No questions.
Eric?
Two questions. Back on the healthcare piece. Do you know what, did the healthcare, well, do you have the number, our utilization rate from the,
I don't have it right now, but we have that, yes.
so just for explanation, utilization rate that I'm referring to is for every dollar that we pay, how much insurance company pays out, which is a driving factor in rates when they quote you, if you are costing them money, or if you're at or for every dollar, they're spending $1.20, then we're in a very bad position. So I think that would be a helpful number. And then, have we considered changes to our plan as we look forward? Strategic changes to our plan, with the changing nature of who's receiving care.
Yeah, I think we had talked a little bit about it during the select board presentation, that probably over the summer, we'd want the new manager to get on board and take a look and meet with our union representation to see exactly what we can do in terms of any type of design alterations.
Okay. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, just for my own purposes, that when we lost the AAA rating, was there any specific reason? And I think I might have seen it somewhere, but I can't remember. Could you fill me in on that?
Yep. It was solely due to what they consider debt, but not in terms of our bonded debt, which is a relatively good metric for us, but the liabilities. So our OPEB and pension liability, so the cost per capita is significantly higher than some of the other communities that are AAA. So that was the main driver. We still receive the highest score you can get on budget performance, financial management. We do okay on the economic indicators, but it was those liabilities went from 10% of the score to 20% of the score. And that's always been a weak point, not unique to Danvers, but that's always been a weak point.
Right, but that was our commitment.
Yes.
Yeah, and because I noticed when you talked about it, everything seemed to be good until it wasn't. And I have down here, what about OPED? OPED, and I guess you answered my question.
Again, we have worked tirelessly to bring down that liability between, again, investing, having the select board support a policy to redirect, once pension's fully funded, that excess revenue. Again, that's one of the frustrating parts is we've done everything you need to do. And in fact, we put together, I'm happy to share it with the FinCom, but we put together a presentation. Here's where we were in 2019 on all the key metrics you look at. Here's where we are in 2025, and we're better literally in every single metric, including where we are in terms of our pension OPEB liability. So
How often do they evaluate? Every year?
every time we go for a major borrowing, but I think they made it clear that unless we dramatically alter our funding of, so unless we speed up pension to being fully funded, in 2030 and invest millions and millions of dollars, which again, I can't conscionably recommend that at this
Sure,
point.
sure.
The bang for the buck on the, lower interest rate is not worth deteriorating services, so.
I understand this. You mentioned the positive amounts that we received from the landfill. Now, how long is that going to last? Is that 2 or 3
Another
years?
year, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we actually have a memo going to the select board tomorrow night that I'll share with FinCom as well ahead of Thursday from our town engineer, Stephen King, walking through really the soil filling project as well as where we are in terms of the next phase, which will be solar panels in the future.
Okay. How many solar panels are they looking,
I
or is
do
that
not know,
something
but I
for
believe
for
it's in the
home?
memo, I'll tell you that.
Pardon me?
It's in the memo. but
Okay.
I'll get that out to you.
Is it realistic to expect a continued growth in our investment? I know you just said we've had great rates. I mean, it's been positive.
Yeah. Long-term, no, but I think we're estimating, I believe it's 1.5 million this year. And again, according to our consultants, the terminal rate would still bring in, if it went down into the threes, would still bring in roughly 1.5.
Okay.
If it went lower, again, that's where we don't want to cheat it to the actual because, again, you'd basically be creating a $3 million structural deficit in your budget. But 1.5 is a number that we feel comfortable with for FY '26 and not scary enough if we have to back it down a little bit in '27.
Okay, all right. That's all market-related, is that correct? Yeah. Okay, we'll skip a further question on that area, but moving on. Just, if you can, briefly walk me through the financial policies aspect of, I think it's on your fourth, Roman numeral 4. And I'm a little confused as you had the asterisk on unassigned fund balance as of percentage of net operating expenditure, 8 to 12%. What?
So the asterisk, so we're at 18%, but again, some of that unassigned fund balance, 3.8 million of it is related to the landfill project. So while we're significantly higher than our target, we're generally not going to be ahead of that target. That's, again, a one-time occurrence
Okay.
of that significant revenue, so we wanted to call that out.
But that didn't affect the AAA rating?
Nope,
No,
no.
okay.
That was another thing that they loved.
Oh, okay, thank you, that's all.
Mike?
So from a policy standpoint, if we've made, as you've said, catastrophic efforts in both the retirement and the OPEB to try to meet the goals, and it's clear that we're not going to be able to do that. On the opposite end of it, is there a value in diminishing those amounts moving forward in order to give us a little bit more breathing room in regards to some of our capacity in the event that we do see an unexpected downturn in regards to revenues, especially, I think everybody is understandably concerned about where we will be in regards to state aid. It's a trickle-down effect. The latest estimates are that there may be as much as a 10% diminishment of federal aid, obviously a 10% diminishment in our state aid. If that works that way, it's not that simple, but if it did, would be a sizable amount. Would we be in a position to be able to adjust quickly if we did see a substantial diminishment in our revenues? Something that I know we planned for it a little bit when we dealt with the pandemic. Fortunately enough, other sources of income came in and replaced those areas where we did see severe diminishments. In this particular situation, there is no white horse coming to save us if we have those limitations. And as you said, it's been probably close to 20 years since we faced real cost of concerns in regards to revenues. So,
I mean, in terms of the pension, we're locked in by our valuation.
Yeah.
It's voted on by the retirement board, so we're locked in. We just had our valuation as of January 1, 2024. So we're locked in there. OPEB, we could lower our contribution. Right now, we fund.
It's only
roughly-
$300,000.
Yeah, exactly. The rest comes from free cash. So again, the short answer is no.
Yeah.
Long-term, if the world fell down and 2 years from now, we had to revise our, pension valuation. And as was mentioned, extending the years out.
Yeah.
We could potentially look at that, but again, I would also caution that there are scores lower than AA+ from S&P, so.
No one's going to be borrowing money probably if we're in that situation. But would we ever be in a position once we've assigned money into that OPEB account, is it locked in there and there is no possible way for us to go in and remove it?
No, there are methods to utilizing it.
Okay.
Again, that would be really an emergency.
Dramatic,
class,
but it has the option to be able to do that. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Anything from the audience on the overview? Okay.
All right. With that, we'll jump into the first department tonight, and that's Noel Bach representing the library.
It is me. Do you want me to take that, or do you? I can just
Direct me.
signal you?
Yes.
I can just signal. All right. Fantastic. Good evening, everybody. As you already know, I'm Noelle Bach, the library director. I have one of my trustees here, Ken Lee is here as well with me tonight. So thank you and good evening. So as you can see from our budget, we just have a modest increase, which we kind of do have a little bit pretty much every year. For the most part, our increase is just obligations that we have for salary, for our membership in Noble, which is our consortium, which provides a whole bunch of different things for us. The money goes up there for a little bit, and that's really our increases for the most part. We're fine otherwise. We don't have much. We don't ask for much, but we do a lot with what we have. You can go ahead, Rodney. And then I use this as just like one of my examples of just that we still do really well circulation-wise. Like when we first came out of the pandemic, obviously we had a big jump. It went from, practically nothing to going back to normal. This is a point where I expected us to stop, actually, still be going up with circulation, but we're actually still going up a little bit at a time. And actually this year, since this is only halfway through the year, but when I did these numbers, but we're still increasing with our circulation, which I think is just incredible, and I really tout my staff for providing materials for the community that they really want and that they're coming back to the library to really get from us. So, and we have a wide range of things, so that's just been doing fantastically that we're still going up. I've seen a lot of other libraries going down with their circulation, and we're doing the opposite, so I think that's fantastic. And my children's department likes to pull together statistics, and they pulled together one recently that they actually, since comparing to pre-pandemic numbers to now, it's an actual 63% increase in how much children are checking out in the library than they were back in like 2019. So we're doing pretty good. We're doing good. Next slide, please, Rodney. And then just a bunch of the things that we do so many things at the library, so I just I'm mentioning a bunch of the things here. We have our seed library, where this year we have over 2,000 seed packets that we have going out. People have been taking those a lot right now, so spring is here. We have tons of databases that provide crucial and vetted information for people. So I always like to joke about WebMD, but don't go there when we have information at the library that you get for free. Our community outreach services have been growing all the time. We're actually just took on a volunteer to help out some with that because we're going everywhere. We have all these community events we're going to. We go to a lot of assisted living facilities. We do in-home visits as well. So that's been fantastic. That's been going wonderfully. We have our art shows that now are the standing room there in the library. We have 4 art shows that we do a year with the Danvers Art Association, and now all these other organizations around town that do art and individuals have been booking the space as well. So the room's booked up for the year already, and then I have to in the fall start putting in the schedule for next year. So that's been fantastic, bringing art into the community, and there's a bunch of ways that we work with that as well. They have receptions. We've had lots of author visits, book groups, story times. I have an author interview show on DCAT. We started an English language conversation group this past year, which has been going fantastically as well. And we expanded it out to some of the area motels while we still had some of the residents there. So that's been fantastic. And we have a couple of different resources to help do translation as well in case it's needed. We added a world languages collection for books in Spanish, and we're hoping to add some other languages as that as well. And we added a playgroup in Spanish as well for children. And we've been working hard with our differing abilities, including our grant Improve Access for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. I know there's a lot of things in the news to parse out. The Institute of Museum and Library Services is one of the agencies, federal agencies, that provides funding to all of the states for libraries that is scheduled to be closed down. And so the grant that we have right now for the deaf and hard of hearing, that came out of that agency. So, we have the money for that, so that's okay, and we'll be finished with that grant this year. But that's one of those things that there's some things that we're hoping will still remain around, because some of those cuts will hurt us in the big picture later on. But we also been working with Northeast ARC on some developmental screenings for children. We're developing memory kits is another thing that we're doing for people who have, memory issues and dementia. We work a bunch with the schools. I've been working with the schools a lot, meeting with Dan and the middle school as well to work on, helping work with the middle schoolers, what they're doing after school. So we're coming up with ideas for that. We work with the second graders, do a library card drive with the second graders every year. We do school class visits to the library. We have teen library visits to the high school as well. Of course, the summer reading program, we support everything the schools do with the summer reading and what their assignments are. And we support book clubs at the senior center. We've been working a lot with the senior center. And we've been providing a lot of financial programs, for college financial programs, Medicare programs, Social Security programs. So we have all that for free coming at the library that we do all the time, all year long. So we do a lot with what we got. So I think I have one last slide there, which is just a quote. And Henry Ward Beecher, people know about Harriet Beecher Stowe because she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin. And this is her brother, was her brother, Henry Ward. And I just like this quote, in that I really feel like the library is one of those few necessities that we really should always support in town. And we do have a really well-supported library here, which I think is fantastic. Not every town, like right now, Stoneham's looking at becoming decertified. Yeah, your eyebrows went up. It's like, yeah, they are looking at some serious cuts to things in Stoneham. So, so we're very lucky here that we have the support that we do. So, and that's my budget in a nutshell. Questions, comments?
Mike?
How often is the archival center open?
That's a layered question. So since Richard Trask has been ill, so he's not coming in regularly. So he's working from home and not in regularly. So right now, it's open 3 days a week with the assistant, Julie Selk.
Are we at the point yet where we can contemplate folding that into the regular library operation?
It is. It is already.
Well, it's not if it doesn't open because somebody's at home working at
so you mean
home.
like having somebody else
Yeah,
staff it?
yeah.
It is, well, so what I have happening right now is my reference librarian spends some time in the archives regularly to make sure that she's familiar. And I have a couple other people on staff that do this as well. It's a lot of it's just such specialized information that and all of these other people have other work in other departments that is their main department, that I don't really have someone right now that I could pull to be down there regularly. That's kind of like the unfortunateness of it. I would love, I think we do need more staffing for the archives. And that's, I think, a bigger picture thing. I have a bunch of ideas for how to
Because,
staff
that
that
is,
more.
to the best of my knowledge, that is pretty much the only so if you want to get historic information in regards to, say, historic budgetary information, historic development information, pretty much anything as it relates, not just back to the witchcraft stuff, but if you want to look at stuff for the town in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and it's not available. There's no other mechanism, right? You can't just go to the library and get that information, right?
Well, we do have some information we do have just in the library generally, not just in the archives. And it doesn't matter if the archives is open to the public or not. If like you messaged anybody from the archive, to Richard and said, hey, I'm looking for this information, we can still put that together for you and get it to you if you're looking for something specific. So it's a little bit different because we can answer requests, specific requests for the archives, even if it's not open to the public all the time.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Paul?
Well, thank you for all you do. I
welcome.
believe that the library is certainly appreciated in town, and I've used it myself quite often. Not when I was a student, but as a grandparent, it's my place to go.
It's okay to come later in life.
Yeah, we're at that stage. I noticed your salary and wage, temporary, is a lot higher than the part-time. And I was just wondering, is that summer help type of thing? Is that something that you do a seasonal, or is it, how stable is that versus your part-time help?
And was that the one that we needed to move?
Yes.
Right.
So temporary is pretty much all the non-full-time staff. The part-time is only one position. That's the part-time bookkeeper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Just trying to, let's see. No, you answered the Noble fees. Are you fully staffed now in your mind? I mean, no, please, just be frank. Are you fully staffed now at
Am I
this
fully
point?
staffed? Well, right now I have a couple of openings on staff right now. I mean, do I have enough staff to
Yeah.
do what I need to do? Mostly, I would say. Like, I mean, I do think the archives could use a more hours, an assistant with more hours than what we have happening right now. I do think that there's enough work there that we could use more hours for someone in the archives. And I always have some other things percolating, like our community outreach, like that position was a new position. Really, a few years ago, like I'd rewritten that position, and the person who's in that position, Jillian, she blew that up. So it's huge. Like, so she is at her, limit to what she can do, but there is always more coming to do with that. So like that's another thing that, if I had any wish that I could have, I would love to get an assistant to her, because it looks like we have the appetite for that in town, for sure, for services.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's
Yeah.
all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Love the library.
I know you do.
My questions are probably, with respect to programs, I don't really have any questions. My questions are on the capital side, so that might come back over to you, Rodney. What I'm interested in, as I'm going down in my mind, I saw the doors and I saw, I think, some IT. How is the grounds? What's the state of the grounds at the library? It's a decent size. It's not a newer building, I don't believe, and I don't really see much for the library in terms of in the capital plan through 2030. So I'm assuming, should I assume things are good, or is there something that we need to pay attention to more?
I would defer to Public Works on Thursday night in terms of the status of the building, but I would mention that a lot of those items you're referencing are in the buildings warrant article. If you notice in the 5-year capital plan, the buildings warrant article is extended out 5 years. So again, while the capital plan doesn't call for any major renovation right now, we assume that part of the buildings warrant each year will go towards different library improvements.
Okay. Thank you.
No questions.
Nothing other than what I say every year, which is I think that for our investment, the impact on the community is more than we invest. So, good job.
Thanks.
Ted?
I echo what Arthur said. I'm all good.
Yay.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome.
My perennial question. What is the balance of the Peabody Institute Trust? How's that going?
And you know what? Because I was on vacation, so I missed the first trustees meeting I missed, was this last month. So I don't know the balance that's right now. But it was, the previous month, it was, I want to say, about 640,000 was about where it was at.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious, how much does state aid play into what you're able to do? Do you have a rough idea of what you'll be getting in state aid this year? And what about the augmentation of also the Friends Group?
Oh,
And how do they help you better serve the community?
So as far as state aid goes, the last few years have been very good for the state. I mean, now it's coming out on the other side now, but so the amount of state aid we were getting was higher. So we got probably around 60,000 or so in state aid. And a lot of the state aid numbers, are dependent on population and, size and things like that. But that was definitely, even just a few years ago, it was probably more in the 40s, and it bumped up to the 60s. And they do 2 disbursements during the year, so that's about what it adds up to. So for state aid, we use our state aid to supplement a whole bunch of things, right? So we use it, most of our programming money is either state aid and trust fund money. So usually the programs, anything that we pay for outside that's where that money is coming from. And we also use state aid to supplement certain things maybe book budget items, or so I use state aid particularly I want to do, or I'm working on a signage project for interior for the library, wayfinding signs, so that will be paid for out of state aid. And sometimes if I need to, we'll go to the trust or something like that as well. So those are kind of the ideas of what we use state aid for, but so a lot of the money per year is fixed into our budget to pay for, so we have probably between $20,000 and $30,000 of that money, usually every year, is already earmarked for certain things that we have, like the programming budgets. And if we ever needed to, if budgets got bad here or whatever, like, we can use the state aid money for anything if we want to, right? So we can, if we needed to, throw some money into a part-time employee position, or if we needed to throw money into, like, for a signage project, or if we needed to throw money into the book budget to make sure it was the number that it needed to be, then we can use state aid for that as well, right? So it's nice money because you can use it for however you want to. The Friends have, right now, I was going to say, like, we have our next monthly meeting on Wednesday, but I want to say, so they have probably around $15,000 or so in their bank account right now. So, of course, their whole reason to be is to support the library. So they do give money every year to support some programs and things, like, so they'll give money every year to, like, the children's room for the summer reading prizes, things like that, November. They do. They look for, they do their own work at finding programming, so they're, like, going to support, like, the summer concert series. They're going to, like, pay for one of those, things like that, so they'll do that as well. But they'll also pay for other things, like the mural project that we had in the children's room the last year, like, so they donated money for that. And we've been talking, because they want to look, right now, we've been discussing for some other things, like they'll buy furniture or, like, other items like that as well. So, I mean, they have limits because they spend all their, like, a lot of money, well, not a lot of money, but, probably around $5,000 on the museum passes every year, which are great. So, chunk of their money is going to that every year, right, without fail, and they do keep adding passes to that. But they always are looking for opportunities, other things that we want to buy. I have a dream of, they have these, their study nook things on wheels, that I'd love to get one of those, but they're like $7,000 or something, crazy amount of money. So I keep telling them that's what I want, and so maybe we'll get one sometime. But they're very willing to listen to ideas for things that we need at the library, whether that's furniture, whether it's a program, whether it's summer reading prizes. Like, they're willing to work with us with things that we think that we need or want. So
Great.
Yeah.
And last question, do you have anyone on staff doing any grant writing?
Not particularly. So the grant that we've had, I wrote myself. We don't have anybody specific doing grant writing right now. If the Institute of Museum and Library Services, like the grants that we usually get, that money is usually through them. And so if that goes away, then there'll be less grants for us to be able to get. There are other things out there that we could aim for, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any questions from the audience?
Could I just quick,
Yeah.
if it would be possible, Ronnie, for us to get maybe just an update on sort of what has been done from a building improvement standpoint in the library, because I'm going back for almost 50 years, but I remember them making the football team carry books from downstairs to upstairs and around it, because upstairs used to be a big auditorium, and they were storing stuff. And I think that may have been one of the last times that there was a substantial interior change to the building, and we're talking almost 50 years ago. So,
Yeah.
I know we did a substantial paint, and painting is very expensive in terms of doing that, but it would be interesting to see what we've done. I know we made some dramatic changes or improvements to the Children's Center not too far ago, but if we are going to be potentially in the next decade or so facing the need to spend some money there, we should probably prepare for it and get ready to do it, because it would certainly be worth doing it, I think, as we move forward for the community, so.
Yeah, and I do talk, with the DPW about some of the things. I think I've talked to Rodney about this before too. Like, I would say probably in a decade, we probably would want to look at having a more major renovation of certain areas of the library. Like, I would say for sure that's probably like where we're slowly, going towards. Because I mean, as you say, like the improvements that have been done in the library have been very piecemeal since, like, it was the late 70s, 1980 when they opened.
Thanks for reminding me when that
Yes.
was.
Know all about it. I read all about it. So so certainly, like, we've been replacing lighting is what's been going on now. We just replaced some doors down in the Gordon Room entrance area. We just replaced doors down there. And so there's certainly, though, things that could be done that were, in 1980, probably, woo, great, and now could probably be improved in different ways, as well as particularly looking at accessibility. So, yeah, for sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Certainly entertain a motion.
Move the budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to
Thank you for
stay.
that. Yeah, follow up.
And next up, we have the Danvers, oh, you okay?
That's sweet.
Think of the picture of me in those very,
No,
Okay.
thanks.
tight shorts.
So when you said the I think that was you.
Probably the best team you've ever had, too.
We were pretty good. We could move some books.
That's great.
And Mr. Crane, are you representing your illustrious chairman this evening?
I am. I'm pinch hitting, which I
Well,
figured out just about the time I got here.
The regular Bernie Carbo.
There you go. I like that. I like that. I'm going to try and be relatively brief, but this is the school committee budget, really. It's one of the things that we are tasked with. And so even though it's put together primarily by the district, we really own this budget once it gets to this level. So really just a few comments. We are asking for a budget of $53,965,981. It's a 3.8% increase, and that's a little lower than the last couple of years. As Superintendent Bauer will tell you, we're looking at really a level service budget. We want to try and do essentially what we did last year, and make sure that we take no back steps. We do want to continue trying to improve special education services, so you'll see that as part of this budget. You'll see sort of almost a net zero in terms of positions. There's not a lot of fat in this budget. This budget also reflects that we were able to settle all of the contracts with our collective bargaining units last year, and so this gave us a good amount of certainty going into this fiscal year to know what it's going to cost us going forward for the next few years. Let's see. I do want to point out my colleagues, Mike Shannon and Sean Doherty from the school committee are here, and Pam Crum and Assistant Superintendent Mary Wormers, and I'm sad to say that this will be her last full budget hearing with us after many, many years of service, and we really appreciate everything you've done for the schools, Mary. So thank you. So the superintendent will talk to you about what we're going to do in the process, and Superintendent Bauer, the last couple of years, has changed the process from what Arthur and I remember, in that department heads, principals, they come to us in our budget hearing, and actually they present their portion of the budget and answer questions about what they're trying to do. So that has, I think, been eye-opening for a lot of us and really worked well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Bauer and his team to present the budget in detail for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. How's everybody?
Good evening.
All right. So I know there were a lot of slides. I'll do my best to move through them efficiently, but I do want to point out and thank Eric and the school committee for all their support. We did change the process, and I'll talk a little bit about that just to give more feedback to the stakeholders. But Pam Crum is here, so she may be called from the audience when we get the questions. We couldn't have done this without her. Invaluable. And when you talk about settling the contracts and how she was in the bunker with us, unbelievable. And Mary Wormers, of course, and I know she loves when we point out that, yeah, so we try not to, but we have a wonderful team. So I'll go ahead and begin the slides. All right. Yeah, we're ready to roll. All right, so I think the number one thing is that we looked at our priorities and needs. The budget process really is a year long, but really hits hard in November of the school year. We ask that our school leadership, our administrators, they bring to us, and work with their departments, what are the needs. We give them the goals as outlined by the select board in terms of, we knew this was going to be a level service budget and really nothing, out of the box and parameters this year due to changes happening at the town level. And so we have the goals, they go back. There's been multiple cycles of reviews, so today, the number that you see, the final number, is nowhere near where it was in December and even January. We were working the best we could to make it level service, at the same time trying our best to improve special education services. And I just want to say we have great collaboration with the town, and couldn't do this without Rodney and his team as well. Lots of conversations, lots of meetings, and we feel very supported by the town for the needs of the schools, and we feel that very strongly. So kudos to Rodney and his team. So we look forward to continued collaboration, and like I said, there are multiple revisions in the budget to where we're at today. So the service level, we looked at just, that's our target, maintaining the level of services. And some can argue that maintain the level of services, although that is there's always cost increases with that. But we feel it's very important because we really feel that we're on an upward trajectory of our district and want to continue that. And obviously, special education programming and the generous allocation last year to help provide for special education building of programming and such. We've really done a nice job in that area and continue that work. We actually have a brand-new leadership team. Last year when I came to you, that we turned over the whole team, not anything more than just part of the process, and they've worked really hard. We've conducted audits to really dig deep into all of our programming, just to ensure that we know that we have to be responsible with the allocations and being responsible with building positions to sustain programming, but also to improve programming. And that really is key with the improvements, is a sustainable and fiscally responsible budget. And the other part, too, is looking for ways that we can be not only support and improve our programming, but student achievement is there as well. What can we do to push student achievement? What can we do to attract and keep students in Danvers? And I think we've done a nice job with that, but lots of work to do. So the budget pressures are not unique to our district. The foundational level, we were at 75 per student this year at our Chapter 70 funding, which was, I think, for 230 districts throughout the Commonwealth, which is kind of interesting, knowing that we have multiple needs. We were hoping for that 104 student per day. We were very close to that threshold. And that may change with some work with the supplemental budget. We're keeping our fingers crossed on that. Special education out-district placements, roughly about the same, maybe a little tweak here and there. But again, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison each year because there are circumstances that arise. Rising transportation costs, we're working to address that. I'll speak to that in a little bit. Contractual obligations, and I think as Eric said, that was no small feat. We felt very good to settle all 4 of those contracts, and the overall increase for that is 4.05% just for this year alone. So we knew that coming in, and again, Pam's work to ensure that every little move, every little movement has an impact on that bottom line, and I think we did a great job with that. And certainly, as we looked around us and saw other districts, we don't have that disruption, and the continuity is really critical. And the curricular needs and inflationary pressures that all districts face. Special education costs, transportation, we know that is one where you feel that it's something that is just out of control. And if you look from 2018 to 2025 projected, it's a huge increase. And we are taking steps to flatten the curve. I don't know if we could ever actually go back down, but we are taking some actionable measures to flatten that curve. And that's the reality. We have to provide the transportation. And if you look at the special education costs themselves, as we look to the increase of transportation, increasing tuitions, we do the best that we can to not wear down circuit breaker, but we need circuit breaker to help balance our budget and bring us to a point where we're sustainable. So those costs keep going up too. And that's not unique to Danvers. That's the trend. We look very carefully to maximize resources. So we look really hard at retirements and reallocations of positions as possible, while maintaining a level bit of services. Pam and her team, they've combed through our personnel several times just to make sure and looking for ways that we can, if there are retirements, we've seen some savings and we'll see some savings this year from that for sure. Grant opportunities, we do not have a grant writer. I have a slide about our grant writing this year. Mary Wormers led that charge, and substantial grants that we've received that really have helped us as a district. And try to defer the one-time purchases as much as we can to other lines. We had ESSER in the past, although we wore that count down, and thank God, because you saw what happened in other districts that didn't. So we were in a good position with that. Flatten the curve of transportation, so we are adding 2 7D vans. What that means is that we were able to put 7D as taking students to and from school. I know Eric knows that with the transportation, and the town and the DPW has been outstanding with the collaboration. They were able to help us find 2 vans that we can then translate into in-district special education transportation. We were only able to hire 1 driver, and I have some savings we've already seen just with that 1 driver. We're looking to hire a 2nd driver. And the out-of-district transportation program with the collaborative that I may have mentioned last year is ongoing. In fact, bids have come back. They've selected a company, and they're still projecting 8 to 10% savings for our district, probably closer to 10%, which is substantial. So just that work in itself, is looking ways we can flatten the curve. And out-of-district costs are still increasing. We know the consortium is going to 8% this year, which is not out of line with other consortiums. And continue building our programming as much as we can to keep students in district is still our goal. And we're working really hard at that. So the next slide is one about our grant-funded allocations. And you can see that's well over $200,000 from the previous year. And again, Mary and her team worked really diligently to find whatever grants that are out there that can support our programming. So that's less money we take in operational budget for curricular needs. We do have a nice civics grant that comes into play. The big one, if you notice, the Skills, Capital, Technology, and Equipment Grant, that's to allow us to build pathways which will keep us competitive, such as environmental engineering, environmental science, healthcare. It's outstanding, and that money is really helping us build that program. You might see the 1-8 Discovery Program, and that's clearly to design applied learning, and we're actively in that, a way to help increase student achievement. The Emergency Assistance Program is a separately funded area, so we do receive state aid, although that is running out. As we know, the shelters will be closing down, and the funding from the state, that this will be over. We have 2 more allocations. So the positions that we brought in to help support the EA programming, emergency assistance programming, was funded through state funding. So, and we also know that as numbers change and certainly the demands and needs change, it will shift our staffing as well, so we're preparing for that. Although there still will be a need for ESL programming, those numbers have increased aside from the EA program. Transportation reimbursements for the McKinney-Vento for those that are homeless, that funding is coming back and helping us as well. And whatever money is left over, we're still able to move that forward for another year. So we've been working with our DESI connection for that for the next 2 allocations, which will help us close the gap and see what we can utilize for next year to see if we can move anything forward for next year. But we've been making preparations to downsize that to make it work, but we still have those needs. Strategic planning for the future, again, special education really to us is more about not only providing the services to keep students in district, but make sure that whatever we put in place is sustainable, is able to really work to dig to the root cause of what our programming needs. So one of the areas, the audits that have been, we have a number of audits for our Learning Center programming, our autism strand. We have one for therapeutic coming up. We have a language-based one, those that may go to Landmark and other places. So that information is allowing us to really build the programming and ensure that what we put into place can stand the test of time. The regionalization of the transportation is critical, and really looking for ways we can reallocate staff when possible to build programming. So we're still in the process. We've added some BCBAs, the certified behavior analysts. We're looking to school psychologists that can help with some of the specialized programming. And again, we're connecting the current programming with strategic planning, which, as you know, is in progress, creating that vision for the future, the portrait of the learner, which really takes and digs down deep into the competencies for kids when they walk out of our schools to be as best prepared for success after high school. I did put the slide in for the high school resources, and I did that for a reason, because I know the narrative is that enrollment has dropped. Shouldn't the staffing drop as well? And in some cases, sure, that could be, but as you're trying to preserve and build programmings and more specialized, it's important that we're very smart with that. We have 20 advanced placement courses, which as a former high school principal, that's substantial. And we need those to keep and attract students. Also, innovation pathways, the smaller courses that we need that address the computer science and other pathways through Project Lead the Way, which is hands-on learning. The performing arts, which I think ours is really one of the strongest around, particularly in music, drama, they're outstanding, and their visual arts are strong too. Their early college program, which a lot of people don't know about, which really helps a lot of our students make that balance to transition to college, and our special education programming, looking to bring students back and improve future programming.
Dan, if I may, just while you're on that slide, I know you did, the budget request does indicate there are some small decreases in the faculty at the high school this coming year.
Through attrition and retirements, we're able to, as the high school schedule is not linear like the elementary, right? There are multiple, so it's a matrix.
Yep.
So to absorb any attrition due to retirement, instead of running 10 sections, you could probably run 9 or 8 sections and really see a negligible amount of a class size.
Okay.
So you're able to absorb that.
And we're not really seeing any negative impact on the students in terms of their participation in some of the, it's not the one person teaching the particular quirky AP class or anything like that.
That's why we have to be very careful
Yeah.
about that piece. And when you look at communities around us, to be able to maintain level service and yet hold the line with that I think makes us attractive and keeps students here. Because we do offer, as you mentioned, those advanced placement, which might run one section possibly, depending on
Right.
the demand, right? But it's important to have that. But also some of our other specialized programming and a lot of our special education programming, which would be smaller. So, and that's why we have to be very careful with that and see, like, what do we need to replace? What can we switch down? Because that brings down the bottom line number.
Thank you.
The next slide is that this is the thanks to the town. And these are the positions that we were able to put into place last year with the additional allocation, the 6.41% last year. And these are critical positions. A lot were pulled off of the ESSER account, which that's gone away. A lot to support our schools. The other part too is to build special education programming. We're very thankful for that, and we've gone actually above and beyond the positions allocated. We're able to move some things around to add more positions, but they're woefully needed. You can't underscore when you have, you're building an autism strand program, the amount of support that's needed to ensure that the programming is where it needs to be for our students to have success, as well as the therapeutic and the language base. So we're thankful for the allocation of that. And I knew coming in you would probably ask, what is the update? What did that yield? And I did ask for some quick bullet points from our team. And remember, we have a whole new administrative team. Our district coordinator is new. We have 2 new assistant directors and a new director that have really hit the ground running July 1. We've taken the results of the audits. There are 7 key areas that we're working on. The autism strand, again, we were able to create 2 tiers of our autism programming, moderate and intensive. And right now, the majority of the elementaries at Smith, we were able to align that to really maximize our resources and to really streamline. There's still 1 cohort at Riverside that will age out this year, Holton Richmond and the high school. So that's important that we have a continuous strand through for families as they understand the continuity of programming is critical. And we have about 30% of our students that are at district placement that are would fit this category, so it's important to keep building this one. So we have cohorts of students that move along, and that's attractive to keep kids here. Our therapeutic program, most of that is at Thorpe. We have 1 cohort left at Smith that will age out, not this year, but the following year. We've allowed them to stay because it's important they age out through that, but that allows us to move the resources back. We're trying to balance major programming, as we said last year, at each of the schools, except for Highlands, which is too packed to house a program. So the pathway there is important, and the language-based is really, really important. That's at Great Oak, and it's a smaller cohort. And really about 10% of our students at our district are in that particular disability strand, but that's a huge one where we can get some results on that. So again, next steps are to continue building the programs using existing staff, particularly at the middle school. We're looking to really build that this year stronger, as well as the high school. And we're trying to move things forward over a couple of year programs for that. Special education requests coming up are modest right now. We're really trying to look within, take the audits, and try to build with what we have and see other areas that we project out what we're going to need. The BCBA's, we know that we need another one, school psychologist that can give a higher level of service, particularly in the therapeutic strand. Also team chairs, that's something that's important, that we're trying our best to add them, because that will change the way we do business, which that has to happen. All right, next slide. So we're looking at some areas too where we still can see some potential savings to help us this year, but also next year as well. It's still out there for the supplemental budget in terms of this Chapter 70 funding. There's still a possibility that we may go from a 75 to 104, which that money comes into the town. That would be about 96,000, which would be great. Circuit breaker, the transportation reimbursement is not at the full 75%. It's at 44%. That's in the supplemental budget. We hope it gets through as well, because that would be an additional 449,000. That would really help us. And that really, we've done a lot of advocacy with Sally and Joan at the state level, and that's really important. The potential savings in terms of our overall transportation, we added a transportation coordinator this year, right? And I don't know if I mentioned this last year, but previously we had 2 administrative assistants that shared that duty. For the $2.5+ million budget, by bringing in a coordinator who has industry experience and has done a wonderful job hitting the road, I believe that his savings has already offset his salary already. And he's projecting out for next year a 10% savings overall with the multiple things that we're trying to do. And we did a modest increase to our pre-K tuition. This is part of a 2-year increase. We increased last year, then we added a little bit more this year. That'll be it for a while. That'll bring in a little bit there as well. So some of the short-term transportation, I did mention this last year. The town helped us with 2 non-7D vans, which allows us to transport athletic teams, transport special education during the day. Non-7D would be not to and from school, but for extracurriculars. Our band program utilizes it. Performing arts, we've taken groups over from the high school to the middle school to work with some of our students in a mentor program. Every time we do that, that's one less time we have to rent a bus or van from Salter or from Beacon. And that saves us quite a bit. And we've already projected over that savings, well over 30,000 at least, probably more than that. By adding the second van that for our 7D transport for special education in district, and that came February 24th. Right now we've saved roughly, for the rest of the year, about 26,000 just by adding that van. So that might seem small, but that's just for even part of the year. We have the second van, there'll be more savings. On the warrant from last year, we're purchasing a bus. We're going to add another bus into our route. That means we take one less from Salter. So the cost of us running our own bus is a lot less than renting the one from Salter. And we know right now just the increase from Salter for just the regular transportation, the yellow bus, will go up 24,000. By adding a bus into our system that takes a route, takes one of the buses out, it's about 57,000. So that'll offset that increase. Again, we have, David is his name, he's going through all the contracts of the individualized special education, which a lot of that will go through the regionalization, that savings as well. So now we have a person that can really make sure where runs really fully filled. If there's a student that's absent, we shouldn't be charged for those runs. So we have oversight now in that area. And that's not knocking the people before. They did the best they could. But he's also collaborating with the YMCA. He has an outreach to the Council on Aging. We've reached out to Essex Tech. Any collaboration we can do is important, because even if we look at ways we could possibly utilize after-school transportation, right? So right now we have the 2 vans, but we also could use a bus after school as well to transport, not only our teams, but we could transport others as well, possibly. We want to make sure that we're keeping in mind the needs of our district first. But those are just the small thumbnail sketch of the work that he's doing, and I think that's important to note. Okay. Next is, did we go over am I off a slide, Pam? Probably did. I'm talking so fast. So, again, this basically sums up the previous slide. Sorry. No? Before that. Before that. Yes, this, right. Right. So if we add the vans, consolidate the van routes, cover more pre-K transportation as well. The van contract with vendors and out of district, looking to save, overall 10%, which is substantial. Thank you, Pam, I'm sorry. Right, I'm not good, I used to be a coach, maybe hard to believe, but I used to be. And, so when we break it down, the proposed increases, the non-salary for out of district and transportation, and the non-salary requests for our supplies, curriculum materials, contracted services, the obligations, which gets into all step scale, the 4.05%. That total is 4.9 million. And then offset that with, we're dipping in the circuit breaker a little bit more this year, but we can. It's not ideal, but we know we need to. And we've saved staff with the overage of retirements. As you mentioned, the collapsing of positions, over 470,000. And that could be a little fluid too as retirements come aboard for the offset of a 2.9 million. And that breaks it down into the old pie chart where we know most of our money goes into salaries, which is in most schools, in personnel. Most of our costs are 95% of fixed costs. So our next slide, please. The offsets and increases, the 1.9 million is a 3.8 over last year. And if you break it down over the course of the last 13 years, the 13-year average is 3.87%. Again, we weren't looking at percentages like to have to be here, but we knew coming in, we wanted to really look from within. What can we do to maximize our resources, also provide the level of services that we need, but also know through change and transition, being responsible. I just knew I couldn't come back and ask 6.41 again, But I will tell you that, there will be a need at some point, we just can't predict what next year's going to bring in the next two. We know it's going to be challenging. But it didn't seem to make sense to us to really, come back with another big ask, add some things, then in a year, if there's we wanted to survive the turbulence, but not at the expense of providing services for our students and supporting our staff. So, the 3.8 is lean. And again, we had some tough meetings with our admin, but, I think we see the bigger picture we're looking to build. Again, not anticipating some of the turbulence that we might see, but I feel we're in a better place than many of the districts around us at this point. So I think that's it. I did the best I could. Didn't need a water yet, so it's coming. I feel it, but anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wally?
So with your union contracts, are we going to be just a steady 4% over the next few years? Does that stay steady? How did you negotiate those?
So this year for the teachers, next year will be 3.25%. The following year, 3.5%. And we went with a 4-year contract for the teachers. The fourth year is a 3.25% increase. And pretty standard increases for food service, for our instructional assistants and behavior techs, as well as our admin assistants. So we did a lot of analysis.
Were all of them 4 years?
No.
Oh. Sorry.
Just the teachers was 4 years, and that allowed us to put that
Stagger.
one off cycle.
Yeah.
And it actually wasn't our idea going in, but it worked out well for us. The other contracts are 3 years.
Okay. And you're done with this. Can you explain like your student retention versus your after dark with the tech and your savings there?
So the student retention it's important because that's Chapter 70 funding that
Right.
comes to us.
Right.
And we were down a few this year overall, but holding steady enough where, at least with the tech, we had fewer kids going to the tech. Again, we're not competing directly with them, but I think the programming that we're building and improving at the high school, and also looking to stabilize the middle school, which I believe we're doing a good job with that, is hopefully leading to, retention in those areas. So retention is pretty good right now with that, but we have to keep an eye to that to keep building our programming, improve student outcomes, and also being able to show, what is the end result. If you look at the college placements, you would be pretty impressed with where our students went last year and where they're looking to go this year, as well as opportunities for 8th graders coming into the high school. And now we're really looking in, I think to your point, Wally, we really need to look hard at the 5th graders because decisions are being made much earlier for families. There are options out there. So we need to look, what is our brand? We've been having a lot of discussions about that. What are we doing to show that these are the great things we do? I don't think we're great marketers. We're trying, And I know I talked to Ted about that a couple times last year, and it's something that we need to improve. Schools just aren't built for that, public schools, but I believe the proof is in the pudding, and we're looking for ways, how can we, we kicked off a showcase at the high school. I thought it was a good start, but I think we really need to start looking earlier, because families, as I said, they have decisions, and we want them to come to Danvers Public Schools.
And
I think I gave you a long response, probably longer than I needed.
actually, I had one you didn't touch, but I already.
The After Dark program?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could talk about that. So we met with Essex Tech, and they have a program that would allow students to attend your school for the morning, for the core classes, and then go to Essex Tech in the afternoon for the vocational classes.
Right.
And right now, I'll check with the principal, but we had a great meeting. We're looking to market that, even if we can get a small cohort to go over next year. There's a little cost with that, but it's great for students that still want the programming that we offer and to participate in extracurriculars at our school, such as performing arts and sports.
Yeah.
So that's moving in a good direction.
And to touch on this subject then, with the federal government dissolving the Department of Education, what's your best guess on loss of funding through that, if there is any?
Well, I will probably give you the answer that was given to us by our legislators when we had a legislative lunch, where, they're right now looking for direction as well. They're building their budgets, and the federal budget comes later, as we know. And they're really not getting much indications where that's, obviously if the funding from the feds is less than received, then there's going to be some sort of a piece, something has to give. If you look at our overall, and I meant to bring that sheet tonight, but it's actually in the back of our book how many of the federal entitlements we receive. I think it's like 1.7 million, somewhere in that vicinity. A lot of that is built into Title I and IDEA, which is for special education. Title I is to help for those students that struggle and need help in performance. Some of those areas, depending on where, if there are cuts, I get this question a lot. Some of them we might be able to absorb, but some of those bigger ones we would need to really look from within and obviously have some conversations how we can work through that. But the legislative group that we met with not long ago, obviously they're earmarking a lot for the supplemental budget to get us going, and I think they're all waiting for the same answer that we're waiting to. But, there are real needs, and a lot of that is tied to the Student Opportunities Act, which, is still there, but I tried my best to give you the best answer I could.
You don't have an answer.
Not really, but I'm just teasing. We're looking really hard, though, in terms of internal, like what will we need to do? But if we received significant cuts like that, it would be detrimental to our district.
And something we'd have to come up with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was my question.
But we're all walking the line in public schools because, one of the things that we have to instill is confidence. And that starts with our staff, that starts with our families. And,
Absolutely.
But the reality is, if there would be changes, we have to be ready to make that pivot on that. So we are looking for ways like if this X happens, but it's hard to project that out because, you wouldn't want to look to make any type of
Timing
personnel moves.
isn't
when
good either.
It may not even be maybe a moot point, but I know last year coming into, this school year, every year the federal entitlements were always on the piece where whether level funded or level serviced, and this year I believe they were level funded. So this is an area that's been discussed over years, not necessarily dissolving the Department of Education, but the federal entitlements.
Okay. Thank you.
I tried my best.
Ted?
I have a couple questions. So the Chapter 70 can you clarify that? The funding per student, it wasn't a universal reduction in funding. There's like a grid. Sounds like there's some sort of matrix where if you score in one category, you get $100, and if you score in another category, you get $70.
Yes,
we just scored.
It's a huge formula. It's one that would take a PhD to really, I think, fully grasp. But there are components of it. A lot of it's built on enrollment.
Okay.
And a lot of it's built on that piece where, particularly the foundational budget piece, the 74 versus the 104.
Yeah.
70, that piece is built on enrollment.
Okay.
So enrollment for us, if we keep it steady, that helps us in terms of at least the funding. And also, too, there's some other mechanisms built in for the free and reduced and those of economically disadvantaged as well that have brackets that go into the formula. So if there are more students in that bracket, it could increase that foundational, which I thought we were close. And I know that the legislators we met with and talked with, I've referenced, we had a legislative luncheon a couple weeks ago with all the superintendents in the North Shore, and they were talking about understanding that that formula is, basically needs to be updated, but that's a long, drawn-out affair, but also knowing that the foundational for 233 districts at that level, when there are great needs, to them, they said, well, we should really try to bump that if they can, so if we can get that little bump, that would help us.
Then, so what happens, so I know we went over budget this year on the special education transportation. Where does that money come from? Rodney or Dan? So like, if we're $400,000 over budget, where does that come from?
Over budget?
It depends on the.
I think in the slide it said
Yeah.
that our projection for this,
Yeah.
for, if I'm not mistaken, this year was 2.1 million, and the actual's gonna end up being 2.5, like where,
We're able to recoup some of that from circuit breaker, which is important. And that's why that one slide that mentioned the 44% to the 75% reimbursement. So tuition's reimbursed at the 75%, but the transportation is not fully reimbursable at 75%. So that's that huge piece that we could utilize that would be very helpful for us.
so the cost to the town, what was the net cost to the town change this year versus the budget?
There was no, our appropriation remained the same. Again,
Remained the
they dipped
same.
into, so, then we also, had so again, a couple of years ago, if you remember, actually, I think 2 out of the past 4 years, we had to do a free cash supplemental.
Right.
Because again, we had already been tapping circuit breaker, we had a lot of move-ins. And again, so again, between trying to get circuit breaker to a level standpoint so it could absorb these costs as they come up. And then we'll talk about a little bit more at the end of the month, but increasing our special education stabilization fund as well in case we need to draw on that.
And if we, I just want to focus on this year because I think it'll be illustrative of the bigger issue. So of that $500,000, $400,000 overrun, how much of it was additional kids needing transportation? How much of it was just rates getting jacked up even more than you anticipated? And how much was it like changing in the types of, like, you know, a very specialized type of transit versus for kids that just go on a bus?
Combination of the increase of rates, but also there were times when, you know, there may be X amount of students going to one required going in their own transport. Those things add up quickly to that. And that's why the regionalization is going to help us immensely. It brings some, we hope, stability to that type of funding.
Yeah, I mean, like, I just want to spend a little more time on this because, like, honestly, it's tripled since 2022, and I think for people in town, this, like, you guys are educators, you're not logistics experts. The kids that we've and tasked you with getting to the schools, they aren't even going to our schools. It's like, I think it's something that the select board, DPW, like, this is a town issue, and like, educators shouldn't have to figure all this stuff out. So you mentioned the vans. What was my question gonna be? Are kids able to be driven in non-vans? Like, if one kid needs a ride to a school and there's no one to share or collaborate with, are there other, like, do you have to use a huge 14-seat van, or can somebody be transported in a passenger car?
You mean in terms of one of the special education students and
Yeah.
such? I mean, it's up to us to find transportation, so we would use a service for that.
Okay, but do they offer, like, passenger car-based service?
We haven't run across that, no. They're typically vans, smaller vans, some of them larger vans. We have been working with DPW because they may have another vehicle or two that may not be a van, but a larger, like an expedition or a vehicle like that. We're looking to see if we can add to our fleet, possibly, but that hasn't been part of it.
So what's the constraining factor on the vans? Like, what, can't we just buy, like, I guess I should ask, you said you were looking to hire drivers and we were able to hire one. What are the requirements of a driver? Do they have to be full-time? Are there collective bargaining, it's a stated rate, and they can be part-time drivers?
Part-time drivers, yeah.
So if we could find someone that wants to work from 6:30 to 9:30 and
Yep.
1:30 to 4?
And that's part of the reason David's reaching out to the Y and to the senior center, because they have drivers, and we might be able to collaborate with them possibly, because you might be able to run a route at the school, run a route for them possibly. But it's definitely a flexible piece, and we're looking to be as competitive at the rate as possible. I can't remember what the hourly rate, but, I think we bumped it a little bit. And, adding the bus was gonna help us as well for next year too. But I think for the other vans, Ted, the non-7D, those require just a driver's license and a good record. So, for the coaches that drive or during the day, that's really helped us quite a bit. We've been considering if we might be able to add a third van, would that help us? Or would a 7D van, the 7D really gets a bang for the buck, because those are pretty high rates from a private company versus if we were to run that. But we also have to be careful and work with the DPW and the bandwidth too, to be able to manage the fleet as well. So that's a balancing piece, is the management of the fleet. And they've been great, the DPW, we had a great partnership with them. But it's that piece where but we want to be, we don't want to bring in 5 buses. I don't think we could manage the 5 buses, but by adding 1 bus to the fleet would be a big savings for us there.
How many kids total is it that are, like, on average, would you say that we're transporting in that 2.5?
I don't have that. I can get that for you, Ted. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. I think that's it. I might have other questions pop up, but
Sure.
I'll let you go for now.
Thank you.
Arthur?
First of all, Mary, thank you for retiring. So you allowed Dan to be under the 13-year average, so we could take that salary off. So it's very nice of you. Because I know you weren't ready to retire yet, but no, they're going to miss you over there. I know what you do over there. So and you're too young to retire, so I don't know. So first of all, just kind of following Ted. I mean, I look at that transportation, special ed transportation, and I've only been out of there. I've only been not working with the school department for 3 years. It's 3 times what it was when I left. I don't understand. I mean, is it just literally the rates have gone through the roof? Is that what's happened?
That competition, so just to give you an insight.
Lack of competition?
It doesn't sound like there's competition, actually.
Right, yes, lack of, I should have. But I will tell you that just looking at the regionalization, the company they're going with, they have a fleet of 200 vehicles. So for the price they provide it, so they'll have more opportunities to, so if there's a needed van, it's under the cost.
Yeah,
Which,
I mean, I kind of know, it's just the cost of, just
My
skyrocketed.
concern is that they'll be the ones they'll give you a 10% discount, and they'll have 1 driver instead of 3 and say that you're saving money, and really they're just, that's nothing, not that we can control it today, but my concern is that if they have every vehicle, they'll give you some token discount for combining routes, but they'll sit there and laugh all the way to the bank. I mean, it looks to me like that's what's going on.
But that's why you hired your person, right? So, and is that the increase in central office? When I look at the
we did, and
salary?
we also added to an admin assistant to student services. We certainly saw that was an area that we needed 1 more admin assistant just to balance the load. I don't know how they were able to do with what they did, but that was part of it as well, yes.
But I mean, I think you need to have somebody dedicated to this because of the increase in the cost. So I think that's good. So I also want to say, I think you guys did a great job as far as the contracts. I think the 4 years was a good thing. It gives us cost certainty over a longer period of time.
Yes.
And also, I think the increases were reasonable for both sides, but in light of what we've seen in some other places. So I think that's a positive, a good thing that's occurred over the past year. There's not, I've been looking at these budgets for 20 years now, so there's not a lot you can do. You have 94% of the budget is salaries and special education, and salaries they are what they are. And special ed is you have to provide it, and you just hopefully can find ways to decrease those costs. And I think we're starting that process. I really didn't expect that there'd be a lot of change in the first year of developing programs. I think it's a long-term investment. I think I said last year, I don't think you're going to pull people back. I think kids that are at places that are doing well are going to want to stay at those places, and I don't think we should be in the business of not letting them stay in those places, if that's what they want. But I think you can keep people from going out, but we're going to see that over a longer period of time. So I think that, we'll see how that works, but I'm sure with what you say that you're doing and developing, I think that's going to happen. So we should see a benefit to that over the next few years. I really didn't see anything else. The special education outplacement was down a few $100,000 because of just less kids, or what was that?
There were a few less, but that's a pretty fluid number.
Yeah, I
as
know,
you
I know. It was down, it was actually down exactly the same as the transportation was up.
I think we had 4 move-ins and 1 went out, but
Yep.
yet some students age out, as we know.
Yep.
Yep.
But no, I think it's a reasonable budget. I think you definitely want to maintain, you don't want to obviously pull back, and try to keep developing those programs. And so hopefully that's going to work over the next few years. And hopefully we won't also get hopefully get some good news coming forward and not bad news. But as it looks now, I think it's a good budget.
I remembered my question. Can you explain to me the circuit breaker? I know, so I'm looking at the slide, $2.1 million. Now it's $2.5 million, that's the actual. And then we're saying it's going to go from 44% to 75% reimbursement on transportation. So right now, the $2.5 million for this year, is that net of the circuit breaker? So it's really 2.5 million divided by 0.44 is what we're actually paying? Or is there a circuit break, where does the circuit breaker money flow back?
I'm going to turn this over to, as I said, a phone a friend.
This has made my eyes bleed for
We've been
years.
waiting to hear from Pam all night.
Yeah.
So best practice, so we receive income this year, revenue this year, that is based on, it's a reimbursement of expenses that we had last year. And we are allowed to carry it forward from one year to the next to a limit. Best practice is that we use the revenue that came in last year as our known offset for our expenses this year. But sometimes you can't carry all that money forward because you needed to sort of spend it as it was coming in, and you can't carry that full amount forward. That $2.5 million represents spending beyond just the amount that's being carried over, meaning that that $2.5 million is revenue that will come in from the state next year based on our expenses this year that we need to spend sort of as we get it in order to close the gap in the budget. So that $449,000 of increased circuit breaker revenue that we are hoping for is money that will come to us this year based on actual transportation expenses that we paid last year. And the state budget had so much money allocated for circuit breaker that they did all the reimbursements on the tuition first, and then they used whatever was left over to reimburse as much of the transportation as possible. The goal was 75% of the transportation. They only were able to fund 44% because of what they had available to them. So now the supplemental budget is going to make that pot whole on the state side, which will allow them to increase the reimbursement to Danvers for what we spent last year on transportation. And if that happens, then we will get the $449,000 in additional revenue this year that will be available to us to spend next year.
Okay.
Can I?
And since our costs continue to grow, our circuit breaker revenue next year will be greater than our circuit breaker revenue this year because it's going to be a reimbursement of a larger number.
So, Mr. Chair, does that allow us, in essence, when it comes to this specific set of, a special type of revenue and a particular set of expenditures, are we sort of able to carry over year to year, whereas normally we would have to take action at town meeting to be able to reserve and play out, so.
No, it's a reserve fund under the control of the school department, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the cap is the prior year's amount.
Correct.
So if they got 2.5 in FY '25, and FY '26, they couldn't carry over more than 2.5.
The other part,
You
too-
can't build it up over years and get up to 6 or 7.
I guess the other question I have too is because these are basically, unlike internal expenditures in which we obviously, they get paid out on every second Thursday of every other Thursday, these are bills that come in, get paid sometimes, so do we find ourselves occasionally sort of behind in terms of paying those bills? Or is it more likely that what we're doing is using money that's not necessarily assigned for that bill, but paying that bill knowing that we paid another bill from 6 months before with other money? Not that that's an accounting problem, but it's just a rolling process of state aid coming in, bills coming in from the transport companies and the out-of-placement schools, and we're just making those payments as best we can as they sort of roll through.
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but
I'll take a stab.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think it's more that, again, they plan, here's how much we're going to use in circuit breakers. So it's not tied to a specific bill. They have a projection,
yeah.
but essentially it's its own separate budget.
Yeah, so basically, we're
Is that
getting,
fair?
we're getting a set of revenue that's based to some extent on bills. It's coming in, we have bills that come on board that we need to pay. We utilize that money as best we can
Exactly.
to be able to make those payments. And at the end of the day, what we hope is that we don't have that much of a delta between the two that will require us to dip into
Yeah.
So
So for example, we have a move, that's the problem.
Yeah.
If we have a couple move-ins, then,
Yeah.
because again, I think they have a pretty good handle on the cost. You know, next year, based on if these were all the students, here's what we project the cost would be, project in the increases on our district. But again, if you have one move-in or one student who was here who now needs to go out, that's where it really throws off the concept of budgeting for special education.
Sorry, I went out of order, and I know Erin has a lot of stuff, so I apologize.
That's okay.
So-
Go ahead, Ted, you can keep going.
So the 2.4 million is the gross number, the gross billings, and somewhere else in the budget is the circuit breaker money netting out? That's, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to go before Aaron?
Thanks. I want to say you guys did a great job with the contracts. I think the 4-year is wonderful. I think it held a precedent to the other issues that we saw this past fall into the winter, and so I'm glad that we weren't in that same situation. I just want to say thank you. I think what's lacking around the elementary school level and between the therapeutic and learning center within the district is transparency and communication to families. It seems like I would like to understand the difference between therapeutic and learning centers and maybe what Smith School is becoming a specialty of, what Thorpe's going to become a specialty of, and understand how, you know, we can call that equitable distribution of learning across the district. If one school is going to become a specialty and, you know, a learning center, and that's going to be spread across the classrooms, how is that going to be, I guess, compensated for the other districts? And how can the students of Smith that maybe not participate in those programs benefit through either making sure that MTSS is followed through with, or maybe there's a real true vice principal in the program, so that way staff isn't leveraged too hard as it already is. It's a real concern. Staff is leveraged already too much, and so to know that there's going to be even more strain on the resources within the school, I just don't think people are communicated properly. There's not proper transparency in the district. It's a concern that I have. And I really would like to see more help within the elementary school classrooms, you know, through grade 3. There's no aides required for each class. When you have class sizes that go up to 28 students per class, and there's no aide, you know, and that's kind of what we're seeing for estimated numbers for next year, it's a concern, right? So I just want to make sure that although the contracts are done great, there's still strain within, you know, the requirements of what we need, and it would just be great if we could, you know, have more transparency.
Sure. And last year, we went to the effort of aligning the programs with the idea that we should maximize resources and increase collaboration, because we found that as programs were splintered across the different schools, you know, if a teacher was out or an aide was out or there were different shifts in staffing, it created an enormous strain within that building for sure. So last year, we planned it out to divide as best that we could. For example, all the pre-K is at Riverside, and so we moved all the pre-K staff there, and we had some extra money left over to do some internal work to add some bathrooms and needs that to be a code for the pre-K. And then Thorpe will be the therapeutic program that'll house there. Smith will house the learning centers, and Highlands really just doesn't have any room to put anybody. It's a tight fixture, and then Great Oak will have the language-based. So most of those programs are already housed in those buildings. So all the pre-K is already at the Riverside School. At Thorpe, like I said, there's one cohort that is aging out of Smith before everything is fully at Thorpe. So we moved the learning centers from Thorpe to Smith for a logical reason. It's a much better setting for what the programs need. There's much more space, and there's a lot of areas that can improve the programming. That Thorpe it's just tough to make any type of additions and changes. So we shifted, basically moved that piece around. And part of the thing that right now, if you look at the amount of paraprofessionals, we call them instructional assistants at Smith, we have a pretty good number that we've brought aboard, and a lot came over through the funding last year as well. But we also were looking last year, we met with the staffs and said we're moving and we're making these moves. And there was a strong sentiment to allow cohorts to stay in their school, which I understand. And we had a heart-to-heart discussion with the faculties because they really have embraced the students. So instead of moving them in grade 4 or 5, allowing them to finish out the cohort, that puts some stress and strain on us in terms of the staffing. It does, because it stretches it out. And we did that at Riverside as well. So Riverside, the Learning Center cohort is aging out this year, and those resources will move to the middle school as we look to improve that programming. So in terms of transparency, you know, we're doing the best we can. I'll try to continue that piece. And in terms of like what supports, I think your question is like, what are we doing for all of our other students?
All the students,
Right.
every student. How are we making sure that every student has equitable access to their learning and be able to achieve the highest level, and making sure that we're not just focused on, you know, the requirements for that classroom?
Right, so I don't know the 28, I don't think we have any classes of 28.
No, but I think the numbers are showing that they could get there if there's additions, right?
So
So looking at it, I think it shows that next year there's 24, but 25 in grade 5, there's 25, and there's,
So we did it in, across, are you talking to Smith
so
specifically?
just Smith, there's 3 classes that in grade 5, there's 2 that have 25, 1 that has 24, right? That's a pretty large, average class sizes at elementary school levels for, there are studies that say it should be average of 14 to 15 students,
18
right?
to 22, right. So what we did, so those numbers are included, but those students that are in the learning centers spend, you know, we try to use as much inclusion as possible where students can get into the mainstream courses and with their support as well, but many of them are in their substantially removed courses or classrooms as well. So we did a breakdown of the class size per the district because we're really looking hard at that because the school choice issue came up, and did a breakdown of that. So in terms of the percentage, the average class size across the district, I think our largest class might be 3rd grade across the district, and it's like 22.5. And I think the 5th grade might be 19. I don't have those
These
numbers in
numbers.
front of me, but,
I think it's 4th grade.
What are these numbers? So I'm looking at E2.
so we broke down, when we take a look at the students that are included into the grid, many of them that are in the sub-separate classes are listed in those class sizes.
Yeah, but it's all inclusive, so that they might start it's all inclusive. These are the students that are in a class, so we're saying grade 3, 24 students for one class. Grade 5, there's 24, 25, 25. I see that, it's sort of even throughout the district, right? Smith has the capacity to hold another, 4 classrooms per grade. I'm just wondering, at what point do we go back to, okay, you guys say average class size should be 18. At what point do we add another class per grade at Smith? So that way we get to those lower class sizes, right? It's a concern. It's a concern, and I can tell you as a parent at Smith, having all the learning centers being brought to Smith is just not being spoken to. It's just not something that's being communicated clearly, and I can tell you that MTSS and those things are not being monitored closely to make sure that everybody's being offered what they need. It's a concern.
If you want me to respond to the additional, we chose not to add any more. The plan was, as we were looking to shift our programming around to maximize resources, we were also considering adding one class per year at Smith to reach the capacity. We chose to bypass that as we want this to settle in terms of learning center, and once a therapeutic moves out as well, to balance that out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric? Let me try and go quickly. Here we go. You mentioned a little bit about early ed. Do you have any additional early ed plans? I know many districts have looked to their early ed to try and bolster or reinforce or get an early jump on enrollment, to really try to stem that. Any thoughts, future thoughts for that?
Right, the talk is to increase, I thought it was to get up to 25% increase over the next couple of years. That's been the discussion with higher ed. We're looking for ways that we can expand that. We have a cohort right now. We have a person that oversees that in transportation. So we are looking to see, can we add to that? But at this point, we're trying to kind of stay kind of steady right now with that.
Okay.
But that has a huge upside because obviously we have great resources with North Shore right there for us.
You mentioned marketing and communications. Do you have any, and I heard a few things about great things that are going on, and it is not an area that schools are necessarily great at.
Right.
And we see that, we experience that. How do we then attack it or address that? Where are we going?
Well, one of the things we're looking at, obviously, as we finalize our portrait of the graduate and start to align, like, what is our brand and what is our vision as we've come to we're almost finished with that part of it.
Okay.
But also in terms of social media, in terms of how do we get people into our buildings. For example, the showcase was great, but in feedback, again, the staff did a wonderful job, but that should probably take place in the fall. We talked about having it earlier when, students are making decisions then. Also looking, can we create a similar showcase at the middle school? Right, I know right now there's outreach to the fifth graders. We have students that will go to the fifth grades and talk with, the students about options and opportunities, but getting them into the building is an important thing so families can see, what is there. So I think being able to do that, but also just getting the word out more and communicating better across, like, what are the great things that we are doing. On social media is a good part of it too, and we look for ways like even on
Who manages that for the district now, the social media and website?
So we have a few stipend positions that work with that. We don't have a full-time communications director.
Okay, that's get to the point. Let me do these very quickly. Any tariff-related concerns on the supplies line? I was looking at the supplies budget, just.
We discussed that 2 meetings ago where, we have a one-to-one, our technology program, our laptop program. And, obviously we're in our lease phase, so we were saying, well, how much do we really need to, will there be a 15% markup on the Chromebooks? So we're really looking at that carefully. Right now, there's not, a lot of this, the lease itself is not up, but we are talking about, is this one-to-one program we have the right program? Can we make adjustments to it that can absorb, and be able to be more self-sufficient if possible? The technology, we have to make sure we have the technology, but how we're doing it, is there a better way that we can provide the technology?
Thank you. And then my last question, if you could succinctly, you talked about the multiple revisions in the budget. What's your top 1 or 2 things that just didn't make it into the budget?
Well, ideally, having team chairs would be a wonderful thing to have. And Aaron pointed out, assistant principals at the elementary would be nice because you have, it's really, again, it's not knocking, they're doing the best they can. But, it's challenging to be an instructional leader when you're dealing with lots of items that pop up in all of our buildings. They're doing a great job, but that would be a nice to have. But those are pretty big chunks, but that's stuff that we're trying to build out over time.
Okay.
So ideally, 2 team chairs would be great, to add one at the middle or the secondary level and one at the elementary that can really target and certainly take pressure off of the buildings and allow our school psychologists, a lot of them run the meetings, and that would free them up to do more. So that is what we're trying to change on that piece.
Thank you.
There's a lot more that was on the
Well, I know there was a lot, that's why I was like,
Paul?
The regionalization, transportation regionalization, when do you expect that to actually start? Is it this coming year?
This fall, yes.
And
Yep.
what,
Oh, thank
what
you.
communities would be involved? Yeah.
Thanks, Wally. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry.
What communities would be involved with that?
So not there's 20 members, I believe, in the North Shore Consortium, 20 districts. Out of that, there's a pretty good percentage that have participated. Those that didn't participate, I think, want to try to get in now because they actually see this coming. It's going to happen.
Right.
So I think, I don't want to give a number, but I know it's probably like 12-ish, if I remember correctly from the last board meeting. But there are other districts that now see this coming to fruition and say, we'd like to get in on this.
Right. When you set this up, is it going to be part of each school district's vehicles, or are you going to be talking about going out to an independent contractor?
Independent contractor.
Okay.
Yep.
So, all right, that answers one of the questions I had.
And that would, if you'd like, just for, that will allow us to, let's say if we have students going to one particular out-of-district placement, and along the route, maybe somebody in Beverly, somebody in Peabody, along the way allows us to consolidate with the various communities in the consortium that are participating in this.
Strict, but still through the independent contractor?
Correct.
Okay. And now you've talked about the team chairs structure in the special ed department. I think you're talking about elementary, middle school, and then high school. All right. Could you describe what their responsibilities would be and how, what their job description would be if you were fortunate enough to get those in place in the next couple of years?
Right. So it would allow us to do several things. One, they would be involved with the initial meeting. Right. So after the evaluation takes place, the initial meeting comes down to whether a student is requires services or not. And navigating that meeting is not easy. Right? You have a lot of emotions, you have a lot of factors, so that person would chair those meetings, would also chair the annual meetings, the 3-year reviews. They would also help ensure that the IEP document, all the accommodations are where they should be, ensure that the accommodations do not exceed the needs, because that can happen as well. They would also serve it as an administrative piece where they would do evaluations of special educators. For example, at the middle school, we have a number of co-taught classes. They would allow to be able to work with the special educators to ensure that that's going well. And they also would really put a lot of program development as well. So for example, the therapeutic program at the middle school that we're working to make some revisions this year, they would have a huge piece in ensuring, that transition goes smoothly, and if there are issues, they would deal with the day-to-day things that do pop up with students' need, that always happen, particularly also with our autism strand as well. So they would take an enormous amount of pressure off, because right now we have our assistant director at the secondary basically works with both schools, and that's not efficient. We have an elementary that works for 5 schools. Right? That's not efficient. And that's the model that coming in, that's the structure, was really having the school psychologist, chair the meetings, particularly the initial, which is a challenge, because that's not what they went to school for.
Right.
Right? I'm not saying they're doing a bad job. I'm not saying that. But in terms, that would take enormous amount of pressure off, because then the psychologists running the meetings would be freed up to really do deeper level services for those particular programs.
Right.
And I would say that over time, looking at where that pressure is at the elementary, we'd be systematic about where we add that, because that would provide relief for the principals at the elementary level.
Yeah, I'm speaking of the principals. Now, how many of the 5 elementary schools do not have an assistant principal?
None of them.
Not one assistant principal in any of the 5?
Nope, they have assistant to the principal, it's a stipend position that can do extra duties and such, but they're teaching a full course load.
Right, okay. This is, I don't know if you're ready for this question, but you're going to get it.
Everybody's giving me, so go ahead. I got water, so I'm set. I better take a drink then, right?
This is, take a drink.
Okay.
What is in that, by the way, that cup?
It's water.
Okay.
It is a
It's
red
tap
cup.
water too, right?
It's a red cup.
You don't have to answer that, Mr. Superintendent.
This is question, if you had a choice, or if you, not a choice necessarily, but an opportunity to get one thing in your budget that you don't have in right now, that wouldn't be a budget buster, okay?
I believe that's already been, that isn't a budget buster, okay.
I didn't qualify.
Yeah, no.
Am I all set to go?
Go ahead.
Who's following me, by the way? Is there time for the, just teasing.
What would that thing, if you had an opportunity to get one thing to help yourself, regardless of what it is in the school, public schools, do you have any idea what you'd like to have?
The team chairs, yes. Yep.
Team chair?
Yep, and I'm looking currently, there are a few things that we're working through our own budget with areas that we can make some moves to do our best to make that happen.
Well, that'd be great, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully get them not 1 year at a time, but by this time, maybe next year we'll be further advanced. Let's put it that way. Rodney? Okay? And the last thing, don't look at me like that.
I'm not looking at
I didn't dare look at me. I've waited a long time to get Mary, congratulations and thank you for all you do. But I can speak personally, because being associated with the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee, how much the schools have helped us with all the programs. Not just Martin Luther King, but on and on and on and on. Anytime we've needed help, Mary's been there, and so has Dan and the whole staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so no one's asked you this question yet, but if you could get one thing. I will just say this from my familiarity with the Voc Tech budget. The Voc Tech transportation budget is very much apples to oranges, but the Voc Tech budget in total is $2.6 million, and they own all their own buses, they do all their own transportation, which just, so I'm not sure, 2.5 of ours is special ed. I think our actual within district is about $700,000. So, part of me thought, well, maybe if we just bit the bullet and went out there and invested some substantial amount of money to be able to buy the buses, we'd be able to do it for cheaper. But unfortunately, I think what you're...
Like that OPEB trust?
Yeah, the OPEB, yeah, let's use the OPEB trust. But I think what you're trying to do is what we have to do in this situation, which is do it much more piecemeal and to try to find savings whenever we can, so that's been great. Again, another question that you probably won't be expecting, but can you talk a little bit about user fees with the athletic department?
Absolutely. So in anticipation of this question, I think that was foreshadowed last year that it would come back again. We have a joint labor management committee that's actually reviewing the stipends. That was part of our settlement with our teachers. But the offshoot of that is to take a review to our user fees with athletics, because there's one particular sport that I know you mentioned last year that years ago when it was calculated, a lot of the gear requirements came from the school. That no longer is in effect. So we're taking a deep dive into those user fees in terms of, where that is, and ensure that we're equitable with our user fees. So that will take place over the summer, and then hopefully come back next year with any adjustments that would be as equitable as possible.
That's good, because I promised my wife that once I cured the inequity of lacrosse being overcharged, especially girls lacrosse being overcharged, and I accomplished that at the Voc Tech. I was able to get their fee reduced And once I've done it here in Danvers, I can retire and feel as though I've truly accomplished something in my life, so.
And yet cats across the town are still
They're
unleashed.
still unregistered. The only other question I had was looking, there's a relatively sizable, from a percentage standpoint, increase in regards to textbooks, it looked like. There was some discussion in the narrative about the use of workbooks and the purchase of workbooks with it, which just to maybe go down Bill Bradstreet's avenue a little bit.
Okay.
Do we find an advantage, especially with the young kids, utilizing sort of pen and paper type of workbooks over doing it off of, So that's something that we should anticipate, that it's a productive and very good thing for us to be expending that money, even if it's on an annual basis. Those books are being sort of thrown out after a year because those kids are using them, and it's a real valuable part of their education.
Every time I'm in the elementaries, I see the usage of the individual sheets and the students doing the work. They do some work on the laptops when appropriate as well.
Yeah.
But they're still utilizing that, and we talked about this today in our central cabinet meeting in terms of one of our curriculums does not have the associated books, so there's copies you have to make with that. So we've seen some of the copies go up when you would think, we're trying to go the opposite way to be green, but it's necessary.
Great.
And oftentimes, they may bundle up the curriculum packages for, you may want just the computer piece of that, but they don't make it, they don't separate it. It's not like you can go in the shopping cart, they bundle it together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything from the audience? Mr. Bradstreet. Good evening.
Good evening, Bill Bradstreet, town, this is only the first.
Yeah,
Bill
I'm just
Bradstreet.
reminding you.
I know, thank you.
We have rules at our meetings.
A comment, I wanted to thank the school department for addressing a personal issue I had, and they have, so I'm very happy with that. The question is, if there's no grant writer, if you had a grant writer, would the grant writer be the person who's looking for what grants are available, or is that a separate job by someone else?
Well, I think the easy answer to that question is Mary's going to be looking for a hobby in her retirement, so hopefully she might stick around and write some grants for us. But Dan, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, that, the writing of the grants, but also just the implementation of the grants, the reporting out on the grants, it's a lot of work. And Mary shouldered a lot of that, and our incoming assistant superintendent has experience in that area too.
Great.
We do have some that, some of our curriculum directors, we have them help out with grants, but really it's and Mary has an admin assistant that helps at least get things processed, so it's a lot. And Pam.
And Pam.
Of course, she does everything.
Well, thank you for all of your work.
Absolutely.
Anything else from the audience?
Can I make a motion?
You can.
Motion to move the budget?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, we have one absent, but we'll move on anyway. Thank you. And it is after 9. We're going to take a 5-minute break as we let Land Use and Community Services come in and get repositioned. Danvers Public Schools, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. How's things?
Hi, how are you?
We were very happy when we talked. I get it.
You took the vote, huh?
I didn't even realize you weren't there.
I didn't get to say nay.
Oh, was that your plan?
No.
Oh, good.
That's tomorrow night.
All right, let's do
In the big budget.
plan.
All right. Page 65. All right, welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Are we turning things right over to Aaron, or are you chatting first?
I'll lead us through, and Aaron will jump in with questions if that works for you, Mr. Chairman.
Aaron's going to have questions?
No, if you have questions, Aaron will answer the questions. I'll
very
keep
well
the
have
train running as
questions.
quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks. Taking a look at our land use and community services budget, we'll be talking about 5 divisions that make up specifically land use and community services, and then also recreation, which is budgeted separately. So those divisions are inspectional services, health, planning, senior and social services, and veteran services. All in total, it's a 1.94% increase, and we're happy to walk through the different divisions. First is inspectional services. Overall, it's a 7.4% increase on their budget, driven primarily by salaries and wages, and that's tied to a backlog of periodic inspections. So what we'll be doing is bringing on some temp staffing to do sort of the routine work while the building commissioner and the assistant building commissioner are able to tackle the backlog of necessary periodic inspections. Would you like me to stop in between, or?
I just have one, and we can just jump in with questions through each budget?
The only question I have on this one is, when we vote on this, do we vote on each one of these?
No,
lines
we'll do everything but recreation as one, and then we'll come back for recreation.
Okay.
And we'll do the one vote, and then we'll talk about recreation as a separate whole entity. My question was on sealer supplies. How did we just get down to 0 on that? What are we not sealing anymore? And what were we spending all that money sealing?
Through you. Recently, we had to buy new weights and sealers equipment, so we don't, hopefully that should last us quite some time, so we don't need a budget line item for that next year.
The other is we took it in-house, so we used to contract out.
Right.
Now it's a person on staff does it.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? And if anyone from the audience has a question, just raise your hand and you'll be acknowledged.
See the Danvers pictures?
Okay.
Okay, next.
Next, we have public health. Overall, it's a 0.72% increase. Salary and wages is up 9%, driven by some contractual obligations. Operating expenses is a reduction driven, not necessarily an overall town budget reduction, but transferring those expenses to the DPW budget, who manages the pest control for the routine building pest control and maintenance.
Great. Anyone?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
Explain to me, update and adopt new Danvers body art regulations.
Tattoos.
Tattoos, yeah. Is that the businesses in town, correct?
Yes, and if we need Mr. Giacalone, he can jump in, but basically, the Board of Health wants to update the tattoo regulations, working with other area towns. One of the issues is that Salem's a little different than Peabody. Peabody's a little different from Danvers. So the area staff are all kind of working together to try to make sure that, like, there's just one set of standards in the area.
So there are no state regulations?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Great.
Next, we have planning and economic development. Operation expense reduction, again, just cutting one of the budget lines that, based on historical utilization, we were able to trim in the overall townwide effort of balancing the budget. Overall, it's a 0.63% increase.
Good budget.
Senior and social services, salary and wages reduction, same number of staff, but just the turnover in some longtime positions. And then operating expenses and increased costs to prepare and distribute the lovely senior center newsletter.
Go ahead. It's the resident senior.
That's right. The abuse I take.
Well, Arthur is too.
Quiet down.
Okay, now, maybe this is just a typo, I don't understand it. Transportation, on your this division description, it says, provide transportation to seniors and disabled residents under 60. Is that under 60, or?
Disabled
It's
resident.
disabled residents under.
Disabled, oh, okay,
Yep.
I got it. Thank you very much, I apologize.
I only knew that because I read it the wrong way the first time I looked at
Yeah.
it myself.
Okay, that's it for me.
Great. And Veteran Services?
Such a level budget, I couldn't even come up with a bullet to explain the budget, so level funded operating.
Anything? Okay. Is there a motion?
Move the budgets.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Recreation.
All right. Taking a look at the recreation budget, again, it's a small increase related to the contractual obligations on salary and wages, and then a decrease partially based on some of our upcoming fuel estimates. Department total, a 2.75% increase.
Questions? Anyone? Paul?
Throughout some of the budgets, it seems like there's a positive move to reduce the gasoline costs this year. And that's the first time I think I've seen that in the last 4 or 5 years. Optimistic?
So again, we do the best we can. Obviously, we can't prognosticate fuel rates, otherwise none of us would be here. But we try to, our equipment division estimates the fuel rate, and then for the rest of the departments, just based on what their routine usage in terms of mileage.
But you probably are hoping for reduced costs. I
Yeah.
mean, if you drive through town, you see it, but next time you drive through town, it's up 20 cents again. So, okay, that's it for me.
Can you just, across the board, not to do it right now, but can we, at some point, can we get an indication of the entirety of the fleet and what percentage of those are electric vehicles that we have? I'm not really interested necessarily in who gets a car, but I didn't take the same pride that members of the select board did with the idea that the oncoming new town manager, that somehow it's a great feat that she doesn't get a vehicle, but yet virtually everybody else in the town seems to get one. So I'd be interested in that and where those, because I'm sure you probably don't get one either. So, maybe the two bosses should get one and we should be less concerned about other ones, but.
Question?
Yes.
I noticed that you increased I'm not sure where it was, the electric chargers. How many do we have in town? Do you know offhand? Or do you have them over at each, like the police have some vehicles, fire? Do they have all chargers there too? We have one out here, right?
Yeah, again, I would defer to Public Works on Thursday to better answer that question. But yeah, we do have, so we have one Lightning for the police department. We're proposing 2 electric vehicles for fire this year as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And do we have any at Public Works, or no, is this going to be the first one?
Public Works has some as well, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Can I ask too, if Dave Mount could get up just very quickly to talk about the June Wayne Marquee event? Just a chance to have him here and publicly talk a little bit about it.
Good evening, David Mountain, Recreation Director. As Mr. Landers has stated, on June 14th, coming up at Hobart Street, I think it's 32 Hobart Street, we built a pocket park there. Some of you may be familiar with it. There's a pathway. It's the connection to the main rail trail and the new extension. In this park, we've developed the landscape, some seating, some swings. There's some integral landscape components, part of the park that have some sentimental aspects to Wayne and his family. But on June 14th, June 14th, I believe, we will be having a celebration at 10 a.m. It's a Saturday. You should all mark your calendars. It's open to the public. We will have some speakers and a dedication and an unveiling of the new signs, one for the rail trail, naming of the rail trail after Wayne, and also a more personalized sign inside of the park. That's at 10 a.m. I think it'll be very emotional and very important to our community in honoring Wayne and all that he contributed to us. This was a component and a dedication that Wayne himself was interested in and favored. Followed that, we will be having a brief reception up at the Essex Tech at the Larkin Cottage for everyone, including invitees and the public. So I encourage everyone to come out that day. It's going to be a great day. Hopefully, we have some good weather. We've been working, we have a small committee that we've been planning this event, and I think it's a wonderful tribute to a wonderful man and town manager. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, we'll have more, obviously more public information as it comes available. We're still nailing down the logistics, but.
Great, thank you.
I have
You have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, the Riverside Playground, last year you needed, I think, what, $30,000 to fund it? How are you doing with that? Is it?
$265,000.
Oh, $265,000.
$265,000.
You were going to ask PAC
Article.
for a
I'd be
certain
glad to
amount.
give you an
Okay.
update on that. So we've been working very hard with the school and the school community. We'll be before the Board of Selectmen tomorrow evening, accepting a $50,000 gift from the PAC,
Good job.
and that will go along with a $265,000 warrant article we have for the play structure.
Good.
It will then, as Rodney knows, we will then place the order for the structure, and July and August of this year, there will be the site work and deconstruction of the existing playground, and then the building of the new playground to be completed in August. This will be a playground equal to, if not better than, all of the other school playgrounds in town, and most favorably to the school department, it will have poured-in-place rubber surfacing that's similar to what we have over at the Smith School. So we're looking forward to that. It's been a long journey. We've worked very hard in trying to get the components to meet the needs of the community and meet the needs of the school. I think everyone is happy with that, and we're excited for a new playground in town.
Good job. Thank
Equal,
you.
but it will be equal, right, Dave? Equal, not better.
Not better,
Equal, if not better.
Not better.
Not
equal.
better.
I will say this, every playground that we have built over my tenure here seems to be a little bit better than
Well,
the
that's
next
the
one.
way it goes, yes.
Everyone wants a little bit better than the next one, and that
Modernized.
is always a goal of ours.
Good job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Dave.
Anything else on recreation?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Well, and it may not be the right place, but if stuff gets approved in warrant articles for improvements to fields and other recreational areas that are, we run recreation on in town, whose responsibility is it to carry out those improvements?
Mr. Town Manager would be glad to answer that.
It really depends on the project. But if it's a buildings and grounds warrant, generally Public Works.
It's like it's fields, it's stuff that's commissioned last year and the year before.
It
It's Public Works?
would be Public Works, yep.
Okay.
Typically, playgrounds is an area that I have a focus in, and everything else is in grounds.
Okay.
If there's specific ones in particular,
Oh,
we
yeah.
can have an update for you on Thursday if you want to let me know.
Okay.
Anything else?
Move the recreation budget.
Second?
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Good job.
Thus concludes night one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we return Wednesday, same bat time, same bat channel, same bat location. We'll see you all on Wednesday. Thank you.